My fellow bad guys, I, Lex Luthor, your leader, will speak now about my, Lex Luthor's plan. My villainous plan. Question the plan at your peril.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and the last few times I've had Eric Breen here on the channel, we've maybe criticized the industry a little bit, maybe gone in some deep dives on current happenings and maybe things that we're not exactly happy with. And I said, you know what, Eric, I want something a little more positive on the channel today. I know you're not exactly looking forward to future shade, although you are going to dive in a little bit. I said, what is the greatest comic book story you have ever read, sir? And you got me back an answer, and we're going to talk about it here today. It's the Korvac Saga, located in the pages of, I believe it's Avengers 167, essentially through 177. There is a fill-in issue. I think it also started in Thor Annual number 6 or 3. It's one of those story annuals. Obviously here with me to talk about the greatest comic story he has ever read. The man so cool, they call him the Breen. What's up, Eric?
How's it going today, Wes? I'm ready to talk some greatest story ever told.
I'm doing great. I personally, I am aware of the Korvac Saga. It's on my list of things to do, but I have not read it beforehand. So I do feel like a bit of an idiot. So you're going to be informing the viewers and myself about all the great things that are happening. Obviously, there are going to be people watching the video that are aware of the story, and we cannot wait to hear from you as well. Do you agree with Eric? Is the Korvac Saga an amazing comic book story? What are your thoughts? Obviously, we want to hear about those in the comment section. Now, before we get into the Korvac Saga and everything great about it, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this, give us a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, we want to hear your thoughts. And what is the greatest comic book story you've ever read? Maybe we'll do a video here in the future with that. Now, Eric, obviously, this is an Avengers story. Avengers is the big team at Marvel Comics. This is, I believe, from the 70s, right?
1977.
Yes.
In 78.
And when people think of Jim Shooter, they think of perhaps the greatest EIC in Marvel Comics history. He's right up there, depending on how you look at things. But they don't always remember he was a somewhat prolific writer. He did a lot of work with DC Comics. He certainly did a lot of work with Marvel as well. He is the main architect of this. This is his story. He did have a little help from David Michelinie, but the primary artist for the very first half of this story is also George Perez, kind of before he became world-renowned, super artist George Perez. It's not his greatest work ever. It was also got David Wenzel, who's known for his work on the Hobbit series. Certainly much more of a fantasy artist, as well as Sal Buscema. Now, I did read up on some reviews on this. Not the greatest, maybe, art ever in the history of the Avengers.
No question about it. And it kind of reminded me of the Kree Skrull War, where Neil Adams had to bail for the last issue. This one kind of had the same thing, only in the middle. Perez couldn't finish the series, so they had to go to Sal Buscema and then David Wenzel to finish. So when I call this the greatest comic story ever told, the key word is told, because unfortunately the art does not measure up to the story per se, although it doesn't detract from it. But it's hard to, anybody that follows George Perez on a team book is going to come up wanting.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this is Jim Shooter was a visionary, and this is like a year-long story arc, but it's also it ends up bringing a character introduced in Thor. Is kind of a cosmic character. He's from the future. He comes back. He sets up shop on Earth, and it ends up bringing together the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers. I believe for the first time for this like super as epic cosmic level story. That ends up becoming the Korvac Saga.
Yeah, listen, just as a little backstory, Korvac's first appearance, I believe, was in Giant Size Defenders number 3, going back to like 1973. And he was just a standard villain. But this was the story where he realized his full potential. So where this story starts is when Shooter took over the Avengers in, I believe, issue 158. The Avengers had changed their roster a few issues before that, and they were setting up kind of where the team was not having their most successful period in their history. They were losing more battles than they were winning. Like they were losing battles to the Atlanteans, Doctor Doom, and then Shooter took over, and he introduced a character called Graviton, who basically kicked the living crap out of the Avengers. And Thor, who had left the team, came at the last minute to help fight him, and they managed to defeat him, but not do anything they had done. It was basically Graviton defeated himself. So a couple issues later, they bring in Ultron, and Ultron, seemingly kills most of the team, and Thor comes in from out of nowhere to help them battle Ultron. And then a few issues after that, they run into a super powerful Count Nefaria, who basically beats the team like a drum, and Thor has to come in and save him again. But in that issue, it's not Thor that beats him, it's the Vision. So the team is fracturing. Captain America's questioning Iron Man's leadership. The Scarlet Witch is questioning why Thor just keeps showing up when he's needed, and where is he all the other time, and where is Iron Man? Why is he treating this like a second job, which is basically what Captain America is doing. So there are a lot of internal conflicts on the team. Now that leads into what comes up in the Korvac Saga, which begins in issue 167, where they get a call from Nick Fury to go into space because there's this giant construct. Turns out that's the Guardians. They have learned that Korvac, following the events of that Thor annual, has fled to present-day Earth, or in his case, 1,000 years in the past. And that's how they meet the Avengers and tell them what's going on. Well, what makes this interesting is all the other things that are happening around while this is going on. When they get back from space after meeting the Guardians, they find Henry Peter Gyrich, that the guy that X-Men fans are very familiar with. He had just walked into the mansion because of a hole that was put in it by Count Nefaria. And he goes, if this is your security, your security is a joke. I'm taking any more instances like this. I'm taking away your clearance. So as this goes on, the teams, the Guardians end up settling on present day Earth because they need to watch young Vance Astro to keep Korvac from getting to him. Because if they think if Korvac can kill Vance Astro, the Guardians will never come into being, and there'll be no one to stop Korvac. What they don't know is something happened to Korvac when after that Thor annual, he got a hold of something on one of Galactus's ships, and it turned him from who he was into a god. And once he ascended to godhood, he no longer had any desire to defeat the Guardians or destroy anybody. He wanted what was best for humanity, but they don't know that. So he has taken up residence on Earth as a man named Michael, and he meets this woman at a fashion show that he takes for his wife. Well, the woman turns out to be the daughter of the Collector, a longtime villain. But we find that out a couple issues later. But before that, they have to deal with Ultron again, and they do that by Jan brings Jocasta, the robot bride of Ultron, to the mansion because she wants it. Well, she wants it out of her house, and she comes back to life, and she goes to find Ultron, and the team tries to stop her, but Iron Man and Captain America have a plan to have her lead them to Ultron. So when they get there, and this is one of the things I really liked about Shooter's run.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
A lot of the things that I've read about this particular Avengers story, it kind of centers around Jocasta, where Jim Shooter kind of took, a character that had some prominence and really layered out the character and made her a lot more important, like moving forward in Marvel Comics. What did you think about what he had done with Jocasta in Korvac Saga?
I thought it was great because I said the way he set it up, when she was created, Ultron was trying to drain Janet's essence from her into his robot bride. And while he was doing that, enough of Janet's personality that's how that's how Ultron was defeated, because as Jocasta, she sent out a call to bring the Avengers to him. So when she had become inert after that battle, but when she reanimated, she still had essences of Jan's personality, and then developed her own over time, and did become a valuable member of the team for a time. Well, or a team adjacent member, I guess, better way to put it.
Yeah, you know, Jim Shooter, he's always a lot of times he likes to kind of elevate some characters, and specifically this story I always hear about Jocasta. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, but they track Ultron to a convent of all places, and they get there, and Thor and Scarlet Witch are walking down one of the halls, and she says, "You seem troubled," and he goes, "Well," he goes, "it seems this Christian house of worship has no." I reverence where I said for an Asgardian god of thunder, and she just looks down and goes, "Should it?" And I thought it was those little character moments that really made this run really good. So they end up, defeating Ultron, and while this is going on, Avengers are disappearing. Like in an issue before that, Hawkeye and Two Gun Kid are on a train, and Two Gun Kid blips out of existence. In this issue, or the issue before, Quicksilver disappeared from the Himalayas while he's with his wife. And then after this battle, Jocasta and Captain America disappear. So now they have a real problem. What's happening to all these Avengers, and how are they going to find them? So they put out a call to all the other Avengers to come. Basically, we need you all. And the problem is, right around the same time, Hawkeye comes back from, to find the team, to get some help to look for Two Gun Kid, leaves the door open, and that's when Gyart shows up again, and that's a last straw for him. So he strips them of all their clearances, all their privileges, takes their data banks out of the computer rooms. So they're basically finding the missing teammates just got way, way harder. And that's when they get they use the Guardians equipment, and they pinpoint where the Avengers are to a spaceship. And that's when we find out that it's the Collector that's been taking them all out of, where they are, and preserving them, as we find out, because he knows about, that there's a being out there capable of destroying all life in the universe, because Michael's become so powerful. He's shielded himself from the Watcher, Odin, Zeus, Mephisto, and Eternity himself. So this guy is just power incarnate at this point. Not sure how the Collector found out, but we find out that the Collector is one of the elders of the universe. So when they fight him, and it's Hawkeye that ends up defeating him, and that's when he confesses to why he'd been, kidnapping them. And Michael from Earth finds out what has happened, and he just sends out a bolt of energy and obliterates the Collector in front of all the Avengers. And that's when they realize just what they're up against and how serious this is. And they one of the things that happens, I forgot to mention, was Starhawk of the Guardians. He finds Michael before anybody, and they battle, and Michael just utterly destroys Starhawk. But so as not to bring attention to himself, he recreates him, but with no knowledge of his existence. So when it gets to the point to where they finally find traces of him, and they're going to go confront him, and it's another interesting part of the Shooter run. Since they don't have their Quinjets anymore, or any of their equipment, they have to take a bus to Forest Hills to this guy's house. And
Nice.
They get there, and none of the other cosmic Avengers like Moondragon or Captain Marvel, nobody can find any evidence of there being anything wrong with this guy in his house. And then out of nowhere, Starhawk goes, "I will not be made a fool of. You're talking to this, but there's no one there." And that's when they realize, oh, that's why you didn't. He goes, and that's when Michael goes, "I'm really, really sorry that you had to find out this way, because It's now because of your efforts. Odin knows about me. All these characters, Eternity, they all know. He goes, I can't save the universe, but I can save myself. And that sets up the battle between Michael and the Avengers. And it's not a battle, it's a slaughter. He just cuts through, he starts
So
obliterating.
how old were you when this is all actually going on?
15, 16.
15, 16 years old. Is this like mind blowing? Is this something you've never read in your entire life? Like where you're getting like the cosmic team and the earthbound team and they're taking on this godlike like how big did this comic feel at the time?
Oh, at the time, gigantic, because it was about the second and third year that I was collecting, and I'd gone back and read some stuff, but what made this story so interesting was all the subplots, all the little thing, the little human touches, that the character growth, like when they're on the collector's ship, when they find the time machine that explains why Thor kept showing up, because the collector had been plucking him from different points in history to help preserve the Avengers. That's why he had no idea. It seemed to him like he was returning from long absences each time. Well, Two Gun Kid looks at all this and says, screw it, man. I'm going back to 1873. Get me out of here. And a man 100 years out of time would absolutely react like that. The Beast went off because he got a call from the X-Men right in the middle of this story. Didn't come back because he was busy in the X-Men storyline where the team had gotten separated and he was with Jean Grey, later Phoenix. But, if this were a modern story, they just would have left the Beast in the story and not worried about the continuity. But I mean, everything, all the pieces were, it was just and he took off in a Quinjet that he'd been forbidden to use because Gyrich had taken all that crap away from him. But so when they get to the, when they get to the battle, Moondragon, who'd kind of been starting to take over the situation. Oh yeah, another little thing she does. Quicksilver, who had hated the Vision being with his sister for probably close to 80 issues. She just, he's ranting and raving, and she goes, enough, I'll hear no more of this. And she just zaps him in the head. And she goes, not when such filth can be so easily cleansed. So she takes the hatred out of his head. And Hawkeye goes, where do you get off doing that? And he goes, no. He goes, there was no pain. It was more like insight. And so it's just little things like that Shooter sprinkled into his run. But back to the battle. Like I said, she puts out a call to the Guardians. They show up. They don't do any better. I mean, he's just basically killing everybody. And he finally gets to the point where he thinks he's won the day. He stops.
This is the famous cover with him, and it's just him as pure energy.
Well, yeah, and he goes back to his human form just in time for Captain America to deck him. And he goes, you hear this, Mike? This isn't a Superman hitting you. It's just a man. And he goes, and basically he starts getting the better of him and forces him to power back up and says, he goes, doesn't matter. I'll find a way to defeat you. And he goes, given time, I truly believe you would, but time ends for you. He just throws him into a wall and kills him. And then they're down to like Wonder Man, who has been harboring a healthy fear of dying again since he came back. And it manifested in the fight against Nefaria, against Ultron. And he finally conquers his fear against Michael. It's not enough. And his wife, who is also an elder, the collector's daughter, when she gets involved, and all of the people that are left attack Michael, and he realizes that she doubts him for one split second, and he allows himself to die. And then she gets pissed, and she starts, annihilating everybody that's left. But then realizes that, but then she realizes without him, she doesn't want to live. She allows herself to be killed. So you've got this scene with all of these dead Avengers, very few of them left. And we find out that in the last moment before Michael died, he restored all of the people that he'd killed to life because there was no longer any need for them to die because his time was over. And the kicker at the end of the story was he was benevolent. He didn't want to rule. He didn't want to conquer. He just wanted to give people the benefit of what he had become. And it turns out he was the good guy in the story. And the only person that remembered at the end was Moondragon. And because she has Thor turn back into Dr. Blake to save the people that are close to death. And the last line she goes is, "The Avengers will think they've won a great triumph this day, but I alone will remember." And I'm getting choked up just thinking about the end of that. Yeah, it's just because it was and unfortunately, this being comics, all of it ended up being undone. You mentioned a Korvac Saga that took place in the 90s. I don't even remember that one because
it was like a 4-part miniseries.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure it was serviceable, but in a perfect world, there are certain stories that should be the last time you see a character. Like the Korvac should never have been used again because
I feel the same way thing with Kraven. Like he's never going to go out on a better note than Kraven's Hunt.
Yeah. Fantastic Four 200 when Reed finally defeats Doom definitively. In a perfect world, that would have been, but comics don't work that way. But like I said, when you asked me to do this video, I was thinking, okay, you've got Crisis on Infinite Earths, Batman No Man's Land, the Dark Phoenix saga, the Galactus trilogy, the death of Gwen Stacy. I mean, there's so many to choose from. And this one, I don't know if gets the respect it's due. Hell, Kree Skrull War, the Avengers, the Celestial Madonna saga. The Avengers have had a lot of really, really great events. But when I think about, like I said, the character development, the human interaction, the hopelessness of the situation, the way all the pieces fit together, I think this is the best thing, certainly the best thing Shooter's ever written. And if you check his bibliography, he's written a lot more than people think, other than just the Legion stuff. Mm-hmm. But I can't recommend this 20 issues, like 158 through 177. Can't recommend it highly enough.
So, what's the legacy of the Korvac Saga besides just them trying to rehash it in the 90s? Did you ever see these like elements of the story like really influence other artists or other writers like down the road with maybe they try to work with that really cool ending where it turns out the Avengers weren't the good guys. They won because he decided to essentially sacrifice himself. Has anyone tried to use like that ending?
I'm sure it's been tried again, but not to the degree of success that this was. Because I said this one just this would be hard to improve upon. So anybody that's tried it, subsequently has probably, like I said, come up short. Because I said if there is, nothing leaps immediately to mind. But I said this story though, I said I could read this every year and you see things I didn't see the time before.
Now, if people haven't read this and they're interested in it, obviously you can get the originals. Those are out there, but I think there's been 4 trades in printing. I think 2 hardcover editions as well. So there have been 6 printings of the entire story as a collection. You can also get it, I believe, in the Avengers Masterworks. There's another one in there. There's another one, Masterworks, where it's collected in there as well. So there are some places where you can get the complete story and see what Eric's talking about. If you haven't experienced for yourself, you sold me, my friend. I'm definitely going to go out there and read it because it sounds very exciting. I can't imagine pulling out an ending like that today. I don't think anybody would have the guts.
You're probably right.